all for joining us this afternoon. We are really happy to be at this most unusual LCDQ event. I was just watching Suzanne Kassler and Madeline Stewart from last year, and people were laughing and visiting, and yeah, so this is a different time. So we're going to try and make this entertaining for you, as well as informative. So I am indeed honored to be part of this panel with my very, very distinguished guests. And they've been invited specifically because they've contributed wonderful imagery to my new book called The Perfect Kitchen. And I just wanted to say a couple things about the book before I go on. I call it informed inspiration. This is clearly not a how-to. It's about style and details and emotion and memories. And as we know, the kitchen will always be about food and about cooking, but now I think it's the telephone room and the media center and the homeschool, and most of all, it's a community center. It's a pivotal part of the house. So our very distinguished guests will talk about the kitchens of theirs that are in the book, and sort of incorporate those ideas. And then we have a Q&A after that. So our guests are Tom Kligerman of Ike Kligerman Barkley in New York, Beth Webb of Beth Webb Interiors in Atlanta. I'm sure you all know these people anyway. Robert Stillen of New York and East Hampton, and Michelle Trout. And I just looked this up to be sure because I keep calling it Laguna Beach. You're not. You're from Pacific Palisades in California. So we've got a representation regionally. We have architects and designers. And so I'm going to lead off with Tom. If you'd like to tell me a little bit about the kitchen that is in the book. And yesterday we had a great conversation about this. So there you go, Tom.
So the kitchen that is in the book is a kitchen in a house in the Adirondacks. And it was an interesting project because the original house was built in about 1895 or something like that. And we were called to not only to renovate it, but also to extend it. And in the end, the addition was about 3 times the size of the original house. Everything in the house was designed to look like it had been there since 1890, pretty much including the kitchen. It's a house that's very dark. It's lots of walnut, lots of oak, leather and nail heads and things like that. So the kitchen, had to fit in. I'm just wondering, are we going to see an image of it? I'm just seeing us. Okay, I'll keep going. So the kitchen reflects that palette. One of the things the owners wanted us to do was to make it, feel like the house was not brand new. And it's interesting. It's in an area where it was hard to find a good builder, and the builders, and I hope they're not listening, they were fine, but they really had trouble getting walls straight and floors level and stuff like that. And the owner thought that was great because it just made the whole thing feel like it was hard, it was actually there when the original house was built. So when we see the picture come up, I think I see. That's funny. I'm seeing a genie.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, I'll do it from memory. You know what I'm going to do? I'm sorry to take so long. I happen to have here not only The Perfect Bath by Barbara, I have. Okay, I'll continue.
Someone says that people can see it.
Okay.
A chat note.
Okay. Well. Okay, I'll do from I'm not sure what image people are looking at, but it's the image I know. It's a very beamed. The room has beams of hemlock that are stained dark. The sort of central feature of the kitchen is a La Cornue stove, which is actually black and brass. So the whole kitchen has this sort of moody, smoky arts and crafts feeling. We used brass for the finish on the metal, something you'd see in an old kitchen. The marble is Paonazza marble, which is a Carrara marble. Again, it has this deep, it's a white marble, it's a Carrara marble, but it has lots of veining. It's actually like an Arabescato, but with deep brown and gray veins. That's on the island. And then the perimeter, the countertops are a Belgian granite called Petit Granit, which is a very beautiful sort of fine grain but dark Belgian granite. There's a little, the hood is copper, excuse me, is brass and enameled dark, kind of dark brown. There's an interesting story about that hood. It was actually a hood that we designed for another client about 15 years earlier. It ended up not getting used, and it sat in a warehouse in Queens. We recycled this, so even our design had a little of our own history. The house was very historical, but this, this hood had a little history too. In fact, when the guy from our office went to pick it up in Queens, he rented a white van, drove out to Queens, put it in the back, and he was driving through the tunnel, and he was pulled over by Homeland Security, wondering what he was doing. And they searched, and they found this hood, made it up to the site. But as Barbara said, the kitchen is sort of the community center. Frank Lloyd Wright said the hearth is the heart of the home, but in a way, the kitchen is really the heart of the home. It's where everybody gathers, and whether you're doing a 5,000 square foot house, a 2,500 square foot apartment, or a 30,000 square foot house, everybody ends up in the kitchen. It's where people feel comfortable. It's where you have your close friends. It's where you have your family. So as in most houses, this room has really become the most important room in the house. By the way, the cabinetry is butternut, which is a nice sort of deep brown wood. It's actually in the walnut family. It's not as dark as black walnut, but it's a dark sort of rich brown that kind of completes that deep palette.
The thing that I mostly loved about this image was the complete richness of it all the way around. The dark cabinetry and this crazy marble. And the other thing that I loved is it has a rotisserie in it, which feels like somebody went out and shot a deer or something and you put it on the rotisserie. But nonetheless, it is quite a stellar, and there's such a depth there that we really loved.
It's actually in a part of the country, Barb, where you simply open the kitchen door and a deer runs into the kitchen. And you grab him, and then you can.
And I just put it on the spit. Very good.
If you catch the deer, you can have dinner.
Yes, dear. Beth.
Yes.
There you have two images that I'd like to talk about today. The first is a rather large, it feels white and lovely kitchen, and you can talk about that. But there's something very special in the second kitchen of yours that I'd like you to talk about too.
I know that's your favorite, Barbara.
I
The
know.
first kitchen, yes, it is light and bright, and it's, I loved it that you used it as sort of the opener to the book. And who doesn't love a white kitchen? I mean, we do a lot of different kitchens. We do a lot of different colored kitchens, but this was a really fresh and inviting big white kitchen with your regulator taking center stage. The family who lives in the house, the house is actually on St. Simon's Island, Georgia. And it's a very active family of 6. They have 4 children in high school. She's an OBGYN. He's a plastic surgeon. And it sits on a beautiful lake, and it has a huge outdoor seating area and outdoor kitchen right outside the door of that enormous kitchen island. But they have a nanny and they have a cook because both parents are very, very, very busy, understandably. And the kitchen was really made to be that workhorse of a house. In the house, they have an indoor basketball court. They have a huge game room for the kids and big media room. And they built the house we did it with T.S. Adams Architects in Atlanta, Georgia. But they wanted the house to be that sanctuary and that place to sort of keep the kids, high school age kids, home. And they succeeded in doing that. Both parents cooked, the kids are very active. And so the whole impetus was just make that house and make everything in it as functional as it could be. There's her office that's directly off the kitchen, and then there's an enormous pantry behind it. And an enormous laundry room too. They had 4 washers and dryers in the laundry room off that kitchen.
Oh my God.
So to say that it's a workhorse of a house is an understatement. They designed those 2 panels behind the sink, either side of the range, to be storage. So that slab actually slides as a pocket door, and it has oil storage on one side and then the spices on the other. But, all in all, it feels as fresh and inviting. It's open air. You can open the doors, breakfast rooms off it, and the family rooms off that. So it is, a wonderful, fresh, and inviting family kitchen. The second one is in a tiny house in the Low Country. The footprint's minuscule. And you'll see in the photos, I mean, it feels like a garden room, but it's actually really the kitchen. And I call it the one butt kitchen because you literally can only kind of get one person in there. And that window is a pass through to the screened in porch above the where you see that wonderful, wonderful backsplash detail out of soapstone. We did an integrated soapstone sink, and it's deep and it's large for something so small, but it's sort of the scale and the volume. And this kitchen was designed by Peter Block Architects in Atlanta, Georgia. But it's warm and it's inviting with the gorgeous soapstone and the beautiful window that just opens to that screen porch. Uh-oh, Barbara, you're on mute.
What I particularly love is the ginormous backsplash. It is totally unexpected because I thought it was actually a flower room or something like that. But here it is, a kitchen. And I thought it was simply a brilliant idea and one that I didn't see anywhere else. So kudos.
Thank you.
Uh,
It's a
I was-
place.
Robert, yours are clearly New York kitchens, I believe. One looks like it's from a loft, and the other was a part of the reason I chose it was that the color was pretty amazing. So, I mean, there's a conversation about color here that is interesting, I would think.
Sure. Does it matter which one I start with?
I don't know the answer to that because somebody else has this one.
I could. Are you asking me, or I could either? I just need to know which one.
Green one.
Okay, green one, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So the green kitchen is in a house in the Hamptons, in East Hampton, actually in Wainscott. I'm in the Georgica Association, which is an old, turn of the century sort of association of houses. My clients actually have a new house. They tore down the original house and built a newish house that's about 10 years old. And when they built the house, the kitchen that came with it kind of just never really worked right. So maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, we embarked on this big sort of renovation, and the kitchen is quite large. It doesn't really necessarily read that way in the photograph, although I don't think it reads small. And the client really just wanted to have like a beautiful country kitchen that like they love to cook and entertain. And it kind of like the room is almost like an exaggerated U or something. It gets wider as it goes toward these French doors. And so that wall that you see at the green cabinetry is actually on a slight angle. And then on the opposite side, there's an island and another wall, and they get wider, which is strange, but it sort of works. And anyway, they just wanted this big kitchen. There's a huge island of it that you could really sort of live in. And the client likes color, and it's a country house. And so that's the color. Just we did it. The kitchen actually has multiple elements. There are the cabinetry that's in that beautiful green color. We have the tile. There's an island that's done in sort of like a beautiful patinated oak. And yeah, it was just the kitchen was just meant to be very, very warm and livable. That particular elevation ended up being a place where they have a coffee bar, and they really use that every day for their setup for like breakfast and kind of like entertaining throughout the day, and everybody sort of services through that. And it's worked out super great. And what was sort of like a so-so situation in that house for them has turned out to be like the heart and soul of their house, which is exactly what Tom was saying earlier. And I completely agree with Tom on that. I find that in my own houses and my apartment and all the projects we do, that the kitchen is the soul of the house. And we usually do sort of larger kitchens that oftentimes encompass a family space and a dining space and all that, which this one all has. And it's the soul of the house.
The one thing I did notice and thought you might want to speak about a little bit is the fact that it looks like there are sort of pieces of sculpture and maybe even some art that we can't see. And I love to think about the fact that people say, oh no, how can I put art in the kitchen? Well, why can't you?
100%. So this client never said why we can't do that. She probably wouldn't have done it on her own, but she really liked the idea. She's very game and open, and the truth is that the kitchen is so large that there's plenty of room to have everything that you could ever possibly want. It also has a great pantry that has the beautiful tiled floor on it, and so there was a lot of room, and you want the room to have some warmth and some layers, and it's too big and it's too open and it's too much a part of your life every single day to just make it a kitchen. It really is a living space, and so adding books and objects and art really kind of like that sort of layering does it, and we've done it in a way that it doesn't interfere with like the realities of actually being able to use it as a kitchen as well.
And of course, the second kitchen clearly is in a loft.
It is. That is in a loft in Tribeca, in a historic loft building on Franklin Street that was probably converted to living space maybe in the 70s or the 80s. It was actually done by a famous Italian architect who's since died, and the lobby has a beautiful Sol LeWitt piece that covers all the walls of the lobby. And my clients bought it maybe about 10 years ago, and they had to move into it quickly, and they lived in it for a year or two, and we didn't really do anything but move them in. And then after they were there, they liked to cook, and they, at the time, their kids were maybe like 8 and 10. Now they're probably going to college, but they have lots of friends and they like to entertain. This particular pretty large alcove is on the side of a really large loft-like space that has a family room, a dining space, and another living room and a fireplace on one end. And then it has all windows overlooking, I think it's Varick Street on one side and Franklin on another. And so the kitchen was really, by the time that we did it, they had lived there long enough to know really what worked and didn't, what worked and what didn't work. So they loved there was an island there, and it worked super well with the kids and people coming and going and a casual lifestyle. And then all the sort of functionality of the kitchen was really thought out. And I wanted it to be sort of feel modern, but also kind of like, relate to an industrial loft building, which is what it was. We were lucky enough that they kept those beautiful columns that were original to the building, and the steel I-beam was exposed, and it just has like the real character of the loft. And the kitchen and the whole thing that we did to that apartment was try to take it a little bit backwards, closer to what it was originally, because the renovation in the 80s was really, it was very contemporary and a lot of drywall and just and not so functional. We ended up redoing the kitchen and the bathroom and like kind of all those spaces throughout the entire apartment. And they love this kitchen. It's super serviceable. It's very, very comfortable. It's durable. And it's just like it's very aesthetically beautiful, but it's very, very functional.
Yeah, it looks it. It absolutely does. It's charming. And Michelle, actually, your kitchen I know fairly well. It just happens to be a Waterworks kitchen, though that is not exactly why it's in the book. It's in there because it's different from all these other kitchens. It really feels modern, but I would call it soft modern. There's a sleekness to it, and yet there's a warmth. And it's brand new. So you might want to talk about that a bit.
Okay. This home was designed by Eric Olson, who's an architect in Southern California. It was designed for a couple from the Midwest, and they have 6 children, but they've all graduated from college, and this home is to be their home when they retire. So this house is on an interesting piece of land. It's on a kind of a triangular shaped lot. So Eric designed it kind of like a yacht. It jets out onto this triangular shaped lot, and it has views on 3 sides of the ocean. It's really extraordinary. And because of the views, he decided to put the kitchen on the 2nd floor. So when you're standing at the island, you're looking out to the Pacific and to Newport Harbor. And because the house is very light and there's lots of glass and lots of views, we decided we wanted to make the kitchen very dark to ground it, to kind of give it this like real prominence in that end of the house. And when we started working on the house, we had been to Waterworks, and we noticed that you had introduced kitchens, and we saw this kitchen and we absolutely loved it. It was perfect for the house. And this finish is walnut. It's stained walnut, this really pretty blue-gray color. And it's hard to tell in the picture, but when you're there, you really see the grain of the wood, which I think is important. And I had never seen walnut stained a color, which I thought was very unusual. And we wanted to use this Calicata Viola, which is this very bold graphic marble. And we used it as much as we could. And then she told us to kind of put the brakes on it. And that's why the backsplash behind the range is another Waterworks product. It's the Arroyo tile. And I think it all looks really nice together. And then all the Waterworks faucets, the regulator faucet, we love that. We love the bold look of that. And then the hardware on this particular cabinetry is really cool because it's integrated into the drawers. And I think it makes another bold statement, which I had never seen. And I really liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think it looks eminently livable, although it is very tidy. I mean, I cannot imagine leaving a fork on the countertop, but that's okay too. I don't know how you manage that when there are 8 people in the house, but have at it. I was going to say that there's a question for Robert about the fact that there is some interesting art that draws the eye. And what the question is does anybody really worry about what's going to happen if you're preparing food, or is it just, it's nothing so precious that it really matters?
Yeah, I would say that if you're going to worry, that if I feel this way about anything in design and houses, if you're going to worry about anything, you shouldn't do it. It's like, you can't enjoy your life that way. And there's nothing in that particular image that's so precious that it couldn't get a little bit of, some milk splashed on it or some batter or something, and you could just kind of wipe it off. These are all like vintage, mostly French paintings that we bought in the flea market and places like that, and we just put nice frames on them. Some of them have glass on them and they're protected anyway. And so, yeah, just enjoy it. Just live with it.
So I'm going to ask a bigger, broader question that anyone might answer. As part of this, often clients want to visit kitchen showrooms. How do you manage through that? They'll see one of this and one of that, and they put it all together, and it looks like a big hodgepodge. And so, how do you control all of that? All right,
Call on somebody.
Tom, you got it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably a question that goes to anything you design. I think one of the things that we as designers do is listen to what our clients want, or listen to what the site's calling for, listen to, the other rooms in the house and how does the kitchen blend in. And you get a lot of signals. You get all kinds of signals when that happens. The owner brings images that seem disparate. And so one of your jobs is to sort of, cut through all the noise and sort of find the common thread. And that goes for a kitchen, that goes for visiting a showroom. You have to listen to it all, and then you have to create a story or some kind of theme you're following. And the more you can follow that, and the more you can select things that reinforce your idea and the client's desires, the better I think the kitchen will be. But you do have to, one of your jobs as an architect or an interior designer or anybody in the design world, an artist, is learning how to edit. And it's hard, but wasn't there a famous designer who said, get all dressed and take one thing off?
Coco Chanel.
Yeah. It's true. It's absolutely true. And usually taking something out or eliminating things makes everything else stronger. So I think we're all editors at heart.
And I think that's our job. I think it's our job, Barbara, when we take a client into a showroom, there's already design in mind. I mostly take them to the kitchen showroom to look at the bells and whistles, not for design ideas. The kitchen is more or less been designed by the time we get to the showroom.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing too. We normally don't go to a showroom unless a client requests it. And it might be early on in a job that we would go, and it would be just like shopping for clothes or anything else. You're just going through the showrooms to get ideas and note what they like, what they don't like, what they're attracted to, what they move away from. And then later in a project, if we did a kitchen with Waterworks or Bull Top or whatever, we would go in to look at all the details and that sort of stuff.
Bells and whistles.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it's really, we're designing it, and it's more like what Tom said. Like, if people come with images of what they kind of want. Then we look at all that and get to know them. And then sometimes I might think, you've got it all wrong, and like those ideas are not good, and I'll tell them that. And then other times, we end up with a kitchen that's a lot like what they wanted. It just depends on the client and all the specifics and stuff. But that's what it is for us.
I have a confession. We rarely go to showrooms either. I was trying to protect our friends at Waterworks who make kitchens. But we rarely go buy kitchen cabinetry from a showroom. We do go because you can see the latest cooktop or the latest refrigerator and that kind of thing, and the things that go in the drawers. But typically, we design our own kitchens. The exception is you mentioned, Robert mentioned Bulltop. If we're doing a really modern house and you want an Italian kitchen, that we'll probably buy. But for the most part, we design them ourselves, and we get ideas. I hope there's no one in the kitchen industry listening to this, although they're probably maybe they'll learn from this. But I think it's to get ideas on the functionality things, less necessarily buying a cabinet.
Yeah,
I think also for us, I mean, if I happen to think that Waterworks does a really nice job with kitchens, and there's a couple of other really nice companies, and sometimes we do go that route for different reasons. We would actually I would be more likely to go, or my team is more likely to go to the showroom to review things, look at samples and all that kind of stuff than our clients actually would go so much. They might go once. We might go.
Ultimately, you are the driver.
Yes.
And I find the clients are so interested in the ergonomics. I mean, again, it's about the functionality so much. They're pretty trusting on the design forefront, but the ergonomics are so imperative in making a kitchen, really work. If a kitchen doesn't work, it's useless.
That's so interesting, because as we designed our kitchen, we were designing it thinking about aging in place. And that's an interesting thing. I mean, I would never admit that I'm 105, but that's okay. But on the other hand, it was, how do the poles work? How does the faucet work? How easy is it to turn on the stove? Do I have to bend over to turn on the oven? Yes, I do. And now I'm so mad. It wasn't necessary. So I think, thinking about technical things is really important. I actually don't very much care about appliances. I only care about the visuals. So that's the other part. So one question, I don't know how much time we really have, but I'm curious about a kitchen that you've been to that's just left this lasting impression on you. Michelle, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. A friend of mine built a villa outside of Versailles in France, and he put the kitchen in the basement, and it was gigantic, the kitchen, and the whole perimeter of this room and the island was a turquoise Le Cornu kitchen.
Oh my God.
The island, the hood, the cabinets all the way around, and it was, I'll never forget it. It was gigantic and it was beautiful.
Did you feel like you were in the bottom of a swimming pool?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Incredible.
I don't know. Somebody asked me that question, and I only remember parts. So I was in a kitchen in France, and I remembered this simply gorgeous floor that I always thought I would have someday, but there it remains. It is not coming with me for sure. And I have just one more question. And so Beth, you can start. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that people can make when thinking about and planning for a kitchen that you just pull them out of the hole?
Well, functionality, of course, is key. I mean, as I said, you're not going to use it and you're not going to be happy there if it doesn't work. And I've had clients take out, I have a client right now taking out an AGA, literally out of their extraordinarily beautiful new kitchen. It was her husband's choice to put in the AGA, and he was English and he loved it, and she hates it. So, after a major renovation, they're pulling the AGA out and she's putting something more functional in. So, I'm quite persnickety when it comes to the appliance package and sort of how the client looks at that and how they really understand that product. We just got through doing our kitchen in Atlanta, and because of sort of the restraints of our property, we have a convection stovetop. I had to call the supplier over 3 times to walk me through it because it was a little bit problematic. So now that I've gotten used to it, I'm fine with it. But I do sort of look at those details of the kitchen design as being imperative. And then, of course, the bells and whistles. I care about those bells and whistles. I care what's in that drawer. I care how we've been cooking 3 meals a day down here in South Carolina, and I want to redo the kitchen.
Oh,
So, you know, it's not that I didn't design it. My husband, who can't boil water, did, but he was thoughtful about it and he did a great job. And he had every bell and whistle in that kitchen, but we need that extra dishwasher. We need that. I want to redo the whole pantry and sort of, again, it's the workability of that space that I deem the most important part of kitchen design. Yes, it needs to be beautiful, but it needs to function.
yeah.
I do ask my clients, are you a fake cook or a real cook? You know, when we start the project.
Yes, I'm a fake cook, by the way. Oh, 3 meals a day. No, 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 no. I really only do 1 meal a day, but every day for, I think this is my 12th week, sort of isolated. It's like, oh my God, just get me a pizza, please.
Well, people are certainly figuring out what's wrong with their kitchen during all of this.
Yes,
That's
exactly, exactly. So do I have enough time here? That what I wanted to ask is, how do you make a kitchen really personal? You know, you look at some of these beautiful kitchens, and I have and went through all these gazillion pictures to find ones that I thought looked great in the book, and all of them are so pristine. But how do you make a kitchen personal? Tom, what do you think?
I guess, you know, again, part of it is, it boils down to getting to know your client well and listening to things they say and the things that they don't say. You kind of, you know, you have to sort of read between the lines. And, you know, doing your best to mirror who you think they are. This question's a good one. Are you a real cook, or do you just want to show off a kitchen? And people do both. By the way, one of the things we haven't talked about is this trend I see lately of having a show kitchen and a working kitchen. I don't know if you others find that. So a lot of times, they do have a show kitchen, and that's who they want everybody to believe they are, or that's where they want to make some toast. But the real action happens in another room. But I think you have to listen to your client, and I think you become kind of a channeler or a diviner, and you pull the stuff together. And I think the interesting thing to do is to take what you think they like and to kind of push them a little bit and to make it more them than they already are almost. Because in some ways, even if they're real working cooks, it's still it's still a little bit of theater. It's still a show place. It's still a place they want to feel comfortable. So I think it boils down to, like all these things in a house or an apartment, is getting to know your client.
Yeah. And the hardest part is, and I talk about this all the time to our sales consultants, is learning how to listen. That's a really hard thing to do. You know, usually, I mean, oh my God, I'm jumping ahead. No, stop. What do you really have to say?
Well, it's true in a funny way. If you listen, it's not just listening to the client, it's listening to the area you're building, and it's thinking about the history of the area. It's thinking, you know, in some ways, this is an oversimplification. These things sort of design themselves. You're there just to pull the pieces together as an editor or a writer. Right. So that is the most important thing, is kind of keeping your ear to the ground.
Yeah. So Robert, last words.
Sure. I think just to that, well, 2 things. You asked about a kitchen that left an impression on me. Yeah. I once was at a barbecue at Richard Meyer's house down the street from me, and we were outside, and I'd never been in the house before. And Anna was like, oh, well, Richard said, like, come in and see the kitchen, or come in and see the house. And so I went in with Richard, and then Anna whispered to me on the side, his daughter, and she said, oh my God, thank God you're going in there. You have to tell him we need a new kitchen. The kitchen was like from the 1950s. And I was like, okay, I'll do what I can. And I went in and I loved the kitchen. It was like this beautiful old school kitchen. The house, I'm sure, was built in the 20s. Maybe a part of it, I'm sure, goes back to the 20s. It didn't feel like an antique. It totally functioned, but it was not a kitchen that we would do today. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I actually love your dad's kitchen the way it is. I don't think you should do anything.
Oh, no. It works. And she walked you back.
Very also unexpected for Richard Meyer, because, you know, he lives in this like 1920s Georgian house in the Hamptons, and he's a modernist architect. So like it's interesting. You know, if you didn't know him, you would never probably know that about it. But I would also say just about the kitchen and everything, and how do you make it livable and personal and all that, is, for me, it's layering and you know, the easiest way for me to sell what I do to my clients is to show them how I live my own life. And I use my kitchen. My kitchen in the Hamptons has a bar in it, a small bar in it, because we make drinks in there. I do have a bar in my house, but it's not convenient. So we do that. We have all the oils and the spices. They're out on the counter. They're organized on trays. You could go on and on and on. I have lots of, vintage ceramic pieces that are all functional, but they're also beautiful and they're collected together. And it's about showing people that and seeing if they like it, what they're attracted to, what they like, and then figuring out how you can interject all that sort of stuff into their life in a way that they will use. Because if you just make it pretty and it's not practical, it's stupid, they're going to get frustrated and annoyed, and I don't like it because it's not real anyway. But if you can bring that into their life by listening to them and asking a million questions and finding out how they're really going to live in their kitchen, how they're going to cook, who's going to use it, when they're going to use it, you can sort of put in all those layers and also show the real life of a kitchen, like what you're really doing. And it's okay. The kitchen doesn't have to be perfect, but it can be stylish. And if it's beautifully designed and everything, you can have a little bit of a mess. And that's how we do it. Just put in things that are functional and beautiful and that you can use. And it just adds a level of, takes off all the edge of everything being brand new.
So Michelle, my last question, I think this is probably way longer than it's supposed to be. So that beautiful kitchen, wherever it is that's newly done, how do they use it? Do they put anything out? There isn't a sign of a coffee pot or a cookbook or anything. How does that thing come to life? It looks stunningly gorgeous and simple and elegant, but how is it going to come to life now that hopefully people are living in it and loving it?
Well, so only 2 people really live there because the children are all grown. So it's just the husband and wife that live there when they're in Southern California. And if you look to the right, you see another regulator faucet. That's actually a bar. So we did put the bar in the kitchen, like you were mentioning, Robert. And then there's a pantry behind the big regulator faucet. That's a pantry where there's a whole coffee station in the pantry. So I just think they're super neat and tidy. Whenever I go there, this is how it looks. There's never junk sitting out.
So layering is not their thing.
No.
No. All right. So they're super modern. Well, I think we are way over our time, and I'm so grateful that you came on today and that we've had a chance to talk about kitchens. It's always great for me to understand that other people out there are thinking about their kitchens as I did, which is really, I never really know until somebody says, oh yeah, I was thinking about that too. So thank you, Tom and Beth and Robert Stillen and Michelle. It's been great to have you here today.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you,
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.